My name is Samantha, and 2 years ago, I fled Charleston in the middle of a storm, carrying the biggest secret of my life. I was pregnant with twins, and their father was about to get engaged to another woman. I thought I'd never look back. But then, a photo of my children went viral, and the man I'd tried to forget sent me an email with just 5 words. I saw them. Are they mine? That was the moment everything fell apart, and everything began again. Before I share the rest of my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to rise above it all. For your family. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. The rain started just as I turned the corner to Graham's studio. Charleston storms always came like that. Sudden and angry. Like they knew something you didn't. I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling for the millionth time that day for something that wasn't there yet. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of knowing I carried Graham's child, and tonight I'd finally tell him. My fingers trembled as I gripped the pregnancy test in my jacket pocket. I'd brought it as proof, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe because part of me still couldn't believe it myself. The studio lights were on. Good. He was still there. I could see movement through the rain-streaked windows of the converted warehouse where we'd spent so many evenings together, him painting while I edited photos on my laptop, where he'd first kissed me against the backdrop of his half-finished canvases, where we'd made love on the paint-stained couch, laughing about how we'd have to throw out our clothes. I pushed open the door, shaking water from my hair. "Graham, sorry I'm late, the rain—" The words died in my throat. She was beautiful in that polished way I could never be. Pearl earrings, a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my rent, and on her left hand, as she ran her fingers through Graham's hair, a diamond that caught the studio lights like a small sun. They were kissing. Not the casual kiss of new lovers, but the comfortable, practiced kiss of people who'd done this 1,000 times before. The pregnancy test slipped from my hand, clattering on the concrete floor. Graham turned. For a moment, his face was a stranger's. Calm, unsurprised. Then something flickered in his eyes. Samantha. Not Sam. Not baby. Just Samantha, like I was someone he'd met at a party once. The woman, his fiancée, I realized with a sick lurch, looked at me with mild curiosity. Oh, is this one of your art students? Art student. I almost laughed. 6 months of my life reduced to art student. I should go, I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from underwater. Samantha, wait. Graham started forward, but she caught his arm. Let her go, darling. We need to get to Mother's dinner party. Mother's dinner party. Of course. Judith Ashford, the senator's wife who controlled half of Charleston's social scene, who Graham had always said he barely spoke to. Another lie to add to the collection. I turned and ran. The storm hit full force as I stumbled down King Street. Rain mixed with tears, both hot against my skin. My phone buzzed. Graham calling. I let it ring. What could he possibly say? That he was sorry? That it wasn't what it looked like? That he loved me? I thought about the baby. Babies, I'd learn later. Growing inside me. What kind of life could I give them here in his city, where his family owned everything from the country club to the newspapers? I made it to my apartment, threw clothes into a suitcase without thinking. My landlord could keep the security deposit. My clients could find another photographer. Nothing mattered except getting out, getting away, getting somewhere where I could think. At the train station, I bought a ticket for the furthest destination they had leaving that night, someplace in Vermont I'd never heard of. As the train pulled away from Charleston, I felt the first cramp, sharp, like a warning. Not now. I whispered to my belly. Please, not now. But my body had its own timeline, its own storm to weather. The nurse's name was Mabel, and she held my hand through 18 hours of labor in a hospital that smelled like pine disinfectant and old coffee. First baby? She asked during a brief break between contractions. Babies, the doctor corrected, checking the ultrasound. Twins. Twins, of course, because one secret wasn't enough to carry. They came into the world during a February blizzard. June 1st. Screaming and fierce, then Miles, quiet and watchful. The nurse wrapped them in hospital blankets and placed them on my chest, and for the first time in 2 days, I stopped thinking about Graham. "Anyone we should call?" Mabel asked gently. I shook my head, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. There was no one. My parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago. My sister lived in Tokyo, married to her job. And Graham? Graham was probably picking out china patterns with his fiancée. "Well then," Mabel said, smoothing June's impossibly soft hair. "Looks like it's just us." She helped me find the cabin. Said her nephew had inherited it but lived in Boston, needed someone to keep an eye on the place. The rent was almost nothing, a blessing since my savings were hemorrhaging with every diaper purchase. The cabin sat at the edge of Hudson Hollow, backed up against a forest that turned white with the first November snow and stayed that way until April. 1 bedroom, a living room with a wood stove, a kitchen with temperamental plumbing. But it had a small sunroom where I could set up my computer and the light was perfect for editing photos. I took any work I could get online. Wedding photos from happier couples, real estate shots that made cramped apartments look spacious. I edited while the baby slept, which wasn't often. June had her days and nights mixed up for the first 3 months, and Miles had colic that lasted until spring. Some nights, I'd walk the cabin's creaking floors with a baby on each shoulder, humming lullabies my mother had sung to me. Other nights, I'd sit in the sunroom watching snow fall, wondering if Graham ever thought about me, if he knew about the babies, if he cared. The nightmares started in March, always the same: Graham finding us, taking the babies, leaving me empty-handed in the snow. I'd wake gasping, rush to the crib to make sure they were still there. June would stir, reaching for me with tiny fists. Miles would sleep on, undisturbed. "You need to talk to someone," Mabel said during one of her visits. She'd taken to stopping by twice a week with groceries and gossip from town. "I'm fine," I lied, bouncing Miles while June gnawed on a teething ring. "Honey, you're a lot of things, but fine isn't one of them." She was right, of course. But therapy required insurance, and insurance required money I didn't have. So instead, I started writing. Just notes at first. June rolled over today. Miles smiled at the mailman. Then longer entries about the sleepless nights, the fear, the fierce love that surprised me with its intensity. I called it the invisible years, though I didn't know why. Maybe because that's how it felt, like we'd disappeared from the world, 3 ghosts haunting a cabin in the woods. But ghosts can't stay hidden forever. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday in October. The twins were 18 months old, toddling through the maple leaves in the town square while I tried to keep them from eating acorns. "One more, Miles," I called, holding up a particularly perfect red leaf. "Show Mama." He grinned, that Graham grin that still made my chest tight, and threw the leaf in the air. June shrieked with delight, trying to catch it as it spiraled down. I didn't notice the photographer until he approached us, camera still in hand. "Sorry to intrude," he said, British accent soft. "I'm doing a piece for National Geographic on New England autumn traditions. That was a beautiful moment. Would you mind if I use the photo?" I should have said no. Should have protected our invisibility like I'd protected everything else about our small life. But he seemed kind, and the kids were getting restless, and what were the odds anyone would see one photo in a magazine? "Sure," I said. "Just don't use our names, okay?" He agreed, thanked me, gave me his card. James Morrison, travel photographer. I forgot about it entirely until Mabel showed up 3 months later, magazine in hand. "You're famous," she announced, spreading it open on my kitchen table. There we were. A full-page spread. The photo had caught June mid-laugh, leaves swirling around her like confetti. Miles reaching up, his face pure joy, and me, crouched between them, looking at my children like they were the only things in the world that mattered, which they were. The caption read, "Single mother, twin strength, the hidden stories of rural America." "It's beautiful," Mabel said. "You look happy." Did I? I studied the woman in the photo. Thinner than I remembered being, circles under her eyes artfully hidden by the golden light, but smiling. Really smiling. "The magazine wants to do a follow-up," Mabel continued. Interview you about single motherhood, maybe do a whole series. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. No interviews, no series. This was a mistake. But the internet had already decided otherwise. Someone posted the photo on Instagram, then Twitter, then Facebook. Hatched single mother twin strength started trending. Parenting blogs picked it up. Morning shows debated whether I looked tired or glowing. The comments ranged from supportive to cruel. She looks so young. Those poor babies without a father. She's so brave. She probably got pregnant on purpose. Look how happy those kids are. Wonder who's paying for all that. I deleted my social media accounts, but it was too late. The photo had taken on a life of its own, shared and reshared by people who projected their own stories onto our faces. Mama, why you sad? June asked one evening, patting my cheek with sticky fingers. I'm not sad, baby. Just tired. Nap time? Miles suggested, hopefully. Everything could be fixed with nap time in his world, if only. The email came 2 weeks later. No subject line. Sent from an address I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. 5 words that stopped my heart. I saw them. Are they mine? I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Part of me had always known this day would come. Graham's family had connections everywhere. Charleston might be 500 miles away, but the internet had made the world impossibly small. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could lie. Say they weren't his. Say the photo was old. The children older now. Say anything except the truth. Instead, I closed the laptop and went to watch my baby sleep. June had kicked off her blanket again, arms flung wide like she was embracing the world. Miles was curled tight, thumb in mouth. Graham's dark hair falling over his forehead. What do I do? I whispered to them. How do I protect you from a world that was never supposed to find us? They slept on, unaware that our invisible years were ending. I made him wait 3 days before responding. 3 days of jumping every time a car drove past the cabin, of checking the locks twice before bed, of holding the twins a little too tightly. Finally, I typed back. We need to talk, alone. He suggested Charleston. I countered with neutral ground, a hiking trail in the Berkshires where I sometimes took photos. Public enough to feel safe, private enough for the conversation we needed to have. I saw him before he saw me. He stood at the trailhead, hands in his pockets, looking at the red maples like they held answers. 2 years had changed him. His hair was shorter, corporate approved. The easy confidence I'd fallen for had hardened into something more careful. Samantha. That same formal tone from the night I'd run. I forced myself to meet his eyes. Graham. We stood there, 2 strangers who'd once shared everything, while hikers passed us on the trail. Finally, he spoke. Are they mine? Does it matter? I kept my voice steady. You made your choice. I made mine. My choice? His laugh was bitter. You disappeared. No note, no explanation. Your landlord said you'd left in the middle of the night. I searched for months. With your fiancé's ring on your finger? He went very still. Is that what you think happened? I don't think anything. I know what I saw. You saw what my mother wanted you to see. The words came out tired, defeated. Catherine was never my fiancé. She was the daughter of Mother's biggest campaign donor, in town for one night. Mother insisted I show her the studio, take a few staged photos for the society pages. That kiss. He shook his head. It meant nothing. She meant nothing. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But I'd spent 2 years building walls around my heart, brick by brick, sleepless night by sleepless night. It doesn't matter now, I said. The hell it doesn't. He stepped closer, and I caught his scent. Same cologne, same soap, same Graham. Mother told me you'd had an abortion, said you'd taken money to leave town, to stay quiet about the whole embarrassing affair. The words hit like physical blows. She said what? She had documents. A clinic receipt. A check she said you'd cashed. I didn't want to believe it, but you were gone and... His voice broke. Are they mine, Samantha? I thought about June's stubborn streak, Miles's artist hands already trying to draw shapes in his mashed potatoes. Graham's children in every way that mattered, but mine in all the ways that counted. I'll agree to a paternity test. I heard myself say. But that's all. No visits, no involvement until I see the results. Fair. He pulled out his phone. Do you have pictures? The pleas in his voice nearly undid me. I showed him one photo. The twins on their second birthday, chocolate cake smeared on laughing faces. His hands shook as he zoomed in. What are their names? June and Miles. He made a sound like he'd been punched. Those were my grandparents' names, the ones who raised me after Dad died. Another piece of the puzzle I'd never had. We'd talked about everything during our 6 months together, except our families. Too painful, we'd said. Too complicated. Look where that had gotten us. I'll send you the clinic information for the test, I said, taking my phone back. Until then, I know, I'll stay away. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Sam, I'm sorry. For all of it. For letting my mother control the narrative, for not fighting harder to find you, for not being there when... He gestured helplessly. I'm sorry. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We stood there as the sun filtered through the leaves, painting everything the color of the past. My phone buzzed. Mabel, texting that the twins were up from their nap. I have to go, I said. Sam, he called as I turned away. That letter I left for you at the studio that night, did you ever read it? I stopped. What letter? But when I looked back, his face had already told me everything I needed to know. The DNA results came back on a Thursday. I knew what they'd say, but seeing it in black and white, probability of paternity 99.98%, still knocked the wind out of me. Graham had been texting daily. Not pushing, just small things. Thinking of you all. Hope the kids are well. The leaves here remind me of your photo. I hadn't responded to any of them, but now, with the results in hand, I couldn't hide behind uncertainty anymore. You can meet them, I texted. Saturday, 2 hours, Hudson Hollow Park. His response was immediate. Thank you. But Friday brought a different kind of message. Official letterhead, delivered by certified mail. Judith Ashford was petitioning for grandparental visitation rights, citing maternal instability and isolation. My hands shook as I read the accusations. Unfit living conditions, no support system, questionable income sources, denial of family access. Each word crafted to paint me as exactly what I'd been, a scared young woman raising babies alone in the woods. She can't do this, I told Mabel, who'd come over the minute I called. The twins were napping, unaware their world was tilting. Oh, honey. Mabel's face was grim. She's Judith Ashford. She can do whatever she wants. The social worker arrived Monday morning. Clipboard in hand, fake smile firmly in place, she walked through our cabin like she was cataloging evidence, which she was. Just the one bedroom? The twins share a crib. They sleep better together. She wrote something down. And you work from home? No traditional employment? I'm a freelance photographer. I show steady income. More writing. No family support? I thought of Mabel, who wasn't family by blood, but had held my hand through labor, taught me to swaddle the twins, shown up every time I needed her. But that wasn't what they wanted to hear. Graham found me sobbing on Mabel's porch that night, twins asleep in their car seats beside me. I can't lose them, I said when I could breathe again. They're everything. You won't. He crouched in front of me, careful not to touch. Mother's gone too far this time. I've already called my lawyer. Your lawyer? I laughed bitterly. You mean your family's lawyer. Who do you think he'll really protect? But I was wrong. The lawyer who showed up the next day was young, fierce, and had her own bone to pick with Judith Ashford. She tried to destroy my sister's custody case 5 years ago, Rebecca Chen explained, spreading documents across my kitchen table. I've been waiting for a chance to return the favor. The piece that changed everything came from Mabel. She'd kept everything. Every receipt from her visits, every photo of her with the twins, every note I'd written thanking her. But most importantly, she'd kept the letter. This came to the hospital the day after you gave birth, she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. Addressed to your doctor, but he'd already left for vacation. I opened it thinking it was about your care. Inside, Judith Ashford's elegant handwriting spelled out her plan. Keep Samantha away from Graham. Ensure she left town. Make whatever arrangements necessary for the unfortunate situation to disappear. She didn't know about the twins, Mabel explained. Thought it was just one baby, and she definitely didn't expect you to keep it. I stared at the letter. Evidence of a conspiracy I'd never imagined. All this time, I'd thought I was protecting my children from indifference. Instead, I'd been hiding them from someone who'd actively tried to erase them. "This is enough?" I asked Rebecca. She smiled, sharp as winter. "This is more than enough, but I need you to do something that might be hard." "What?" "Let Graham meet his children. Show the court you're not keeping them from their father, just from their toxic grandmother." I looked at the twins, June trying to climb out of her high chair while Miles carefully sorted Cheerios by some system only he understood. They deserve to know their father. But more than that, they deserve to be protected from anyone who'd tried to wish them away. "Okay," I said. "Graham can meet them. But Judith Ashford comes near my babies over my dead body." Rebecca's smile widened. "Now you're talking like a mother bear. Let's go save your cubs." I chose the Wildlife Center because the twins loved it and I needed them comfortable. June could spend hours watching the rescued hawks, while Miles preferred the rabbit enclosure, content to sit quietly while they hopped around him. Graham arrived early. I watched from the parking lot as he paced near the entrance, checking his phone, straightening his jacket, running his hands through his hair. Nervous. Good. "Ready?" I asked the twins, though the question was really for me. "Bunnies," Miles confirmed. "Hawks," June countered, already pulling toward the entrance. They didn't notice the stranger who stopped mid-pace when he saw us, but I saw everything. The way his face crumpled for just a moment before he got control, the white-knuckle grip on his phone, the careful steps forward like we might spook and run. "Hi," he managed. "Hi," I knelt between the twins. "June, Miles, this is Graham. He's—" "What? Your father? The man who didn't know you existed?" "He's someone special who wants to meet you." June, my brave girl, marched right up to him. "You like hawks?" Graham looked at me, lost. I nodded. "I love hawks." "Good." She grabbed his hand like she'd known him forever. "Come see. There's one with a hurt wing, but she's getting better." And just like that, my daughter claimed her father. Miles was slower, hanging back, watching. Graham didn't push. He let June lead him to the hawk enclosure, listened to her chatter about wingspans and hunting patterns, half remembered from my explanations, mostly made up. When Miles finally approached, Graham pulled something from his pocket. "I brought this," he said quietly. "I used to draw planes like this when I was your age. Thought maybe—" He held out a small wooden airplane, painted bright blue. Miles took it reverently, running his fingers over the wings. Then, to my amazement, he held up his arms, the universal toddler signal for up. Graham looked at me again. I nodded, throat too tight for words. He lifted Miles carefully like he was made of spun glass. Miles settled against his chest, still clutching the plane, and pointed toward the rabbits. No words. Miles had always been economical with speech, but his meaning was clear. "He wants to show you the rabbits," I translated. What followed was the longest 2 hours of my life. Graham with June on his shoulders so she could see the eagle better. Graham helping Miles fly the wooden plane over the rabbit pen. Graham buying them ice cream from the snack bar and not even flinching when June dropped hers immediately and Miles somehow got chocolate in his hair. "Daddy!" June announced suddenly, pointing at a family walking past. "That's a daddy!" Graham went very still. So did I. June looked between us, then at Graham, 2-year-old logic working overtime. "You daddy?" The question hung in the October air. I should have prepared for this. Should have had a plan. But how do you plan for your daughter's heart? "Yeah," Graham said softly. "I'm your daddy." June considered this. "Where you been?" "I didn't know where to find you, but I'm here now." It should have been more complicated. There should have been tears and confusion and careful explanations. Instead, June said, "Okay," and went back to her hawk observations. Miles, still in Graham's arms, rested his head on his father's shoulder and closed his eyes. That's when I broke. I made it to the bathroom before the sobs hit. 2 years of doing everything alone, of being strong, of pretending I didn't need help, it all came crashing down. Because my children had a father who wanted them, who'd searched for them, who lifted them like they were precious and bought them ice cream and didn't need to be taught how to love them. When I came out, red-eyed but composed, Graham was sitting on a bench with a twin on each side, reading the Wildlife Center map like it was the most interesting story in the world. June was adding creative commentary. Miles was tracing the paths with his finger. He looked up at me. "Thank you," he mouthed over their heads. I sat on the bench across from them, watching my children, our children, bloom under their father's attention. June showing him her hawk dance. Miles carefully placing the wooden plane in Graham's jacket pocket, then patting it to make sure it was safe. "Next Sunday?" Graham asked when it was time to go. I looked at the twins, sleepy and content, chocolate-stained and happy. "Every Sunday," I said. "And Fridays if you can make the drive." His smile could have lit up all of Hudson Hollow. "I'll make the drive." That night, as I tucked them in, June announced, "I have a daddy now." "Yes, baby, you do." "He comes back?" The question every child of a missing parent needs answered. He'll always come back. And somehow, despite everything, I believed it. Winter came early that year. December brought a blizzard that shut down Hudson Hollow for 3 days, and that's when Mabel made her discovery. "I was cleaning out my spare room," she explained, snow still in her hair as she burst through my door. "Found that box of your things from the hospital." I barely remembered giving her a box to store. Those first weeks were a blur of feedings and diapers and learning to function on no sleep. "There's an envelope in here," she continued, pulling it out. "Never been opened. It's addressed to you." My name in Graham's handwriting. The postmark from Charleston, dated the day I left. I stared at it like it might bite. After everything, the DNA test, the custody battle with Judith thrown out of court thanks to Rebecca, Graham's twice-weekly visits that had become the twins' favorite days, this felt like too much. The last piece of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to complete. "Want me to stay?" Mabel asked. I shook my head. Whatever was in that letter, I needed to face it alone. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table while the twins napped, turning the envelope over in my hands. Finally, as snow fell silent outside, I opened it. "My darling Sam, by the time you read this, I'll have already asked you to marry me. God, I hope you said yes. I'm writing this now, before nerves get the better of me, because there are things I need you to know. I've loved you since that first day you walked into my studio, camera around your neck, skeptical of my amateur artist vibes. You were right to be skeptical. I was amateur in everything then, art, life, especially love. You changed that. You change everything. I know we haven't talked about kids, but I dream about them. Your stubbornness in a little girl named June, after my grandmother who raised me when Dad died. Your quiet strength in a boy named Miles, after my grandfather who taught me that love isn't words, but showing up, day after day. I'm showing up now, Sam. Ring in my pocket. You'll laugh, it's not huge, but it was Grandma June's, and she survived the Depression, 2 wars, and 50 years of marriage with it. Heart on my sleeve, everything I am and hope to be laid out before you. My mother will hate this. She has plans for me that don't include an artist photographer who sees through all her Charleston society nonsense. I don't care. The only future I want is the one where I wake up to your face every morning, where our kids, June and Miles, or whatever names you choose, grow up knowing they were wanted, planned for, dreamed into existence. I'm rambling. Nerves, like I said. But here's what matters. I love you. I choose you. I choose us. Forever, if you'll have me. All my love. Graham P.S. If you said no, please disregard this entire letter and we'll pretend it never happened. But I don't think you'll say no. You love me too. I see it when you think I'm not looking. The letter fell from my numb fingers. He'd named them. Before they existed, before he knew about them, he'd named the exact children we'd have. June and Miles. His grandparents' names whispered into the universe like a prophecy. I cried then. Not the desperate tears of abandonment or the angry tears of betrayal, but something deeper. Grief for the life we could have had, the proposal that never happened, the wedding June would have flower girled, the nursery Miles would have helped paint, but also maybe hope. Because the man who wrote this letter was the same one who showed up every Sunday and Friday without fail, who'd learned June needed her sandwich cut in triangles, not squares, who carried extra wipes because Miles was a magnet for messes, who texted me photos of playground equipment he thought they'd like, who was slowly turning his Charleston condo into a child-friendly space, who'd been showing up day after day, just like his grandfather taught him. The twins woke from their nap calling for me. I folded the letter carefully, placed it in the drawer with their birth certificates and first photos. Evidence of a love that had existed before they did, that had somehow survived despite everything. "Mama crying?" June asked when she saw my face. "Happy tears," I told her, which was almost true. "Daddy coming today?" Friday. Of course it was Friday. "Yes, baby, Daddy's coming." And he would. He'd drive through the blizzard if he had to. Because that's what love looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect proposals, but showing up in the snow with juice boxes and goldfish crackers, ready to build the family we'd accidentally created in reverse. Spring arrived late but determined, melting the snow and revealing the garden I'd forgotten I'd planted. Crocuses first, then daffodils, pushing through the mud like hope itself. Graham didn't propose again. We were sitting on the porch watching the twins hunt for bugs when he said simply, "I put an offer on the Riverside house." I knew the one. A 2-story colonial just outside Hudson Hollow, with a yard that backed up to the stream. 4 bedrooms, good schools nearby, close enough to my cabin that nothing would really change. Far enough that everything could. "It needs work," he continued. "The kitchen's from the 70s. There's wood paneling everywhere, but the bones are good." "Graham, I'm not asking you to move in." He kept his eyes on June, who was trying to convince Miles that worms were friendly. "I'm just being closer. For them and for you. When you're ready." Ready. Such a simple word for such a complicated feeling. The house sold by May. I helped him move in, the twins helping by unpacking boxes with enthusiastic chaos. June claimed the room with the window seat immediately. Miles preferred the one next to it, quieter, with a view of the bird feeder. "They could stay overnight sometimes," Graham suggested carefully, "when you need a break." I wasn't ready for that, wasn't ready for a lot of things. But I was ready to watch him hang a swing from the big oak tree, ready to let him teach June to paint in the sunroom, ready to see Miles's face light up when he discovered the model airplane collection in Graham's study, ready for Sunday dinners that stretched into evening, ready for emergency calls when June got croup and I was scared, ready for Graham to show up with medicine and calm competence, sitting with her in the steamy bathroom until she could breathe again. "You're good at this," I told him one Friday in July. The twins were asleep in their rooms. Their rooms. When had I started thinking of them that way? Worn out from a day at the lake. At what? Being their dad. He looked at me across the kitchen table, this man who'd waited, who'd shown up, who'd never once pushed for more than I could give. "I had good teachers," he said. "My grandparents. And you. I didn't teach you anything. You taught me that love isn't ownership, that showing up is more important than showing off, that some things are worth waiting for." The words hung between us, delicate as spider silk. "I'm not who I was," I said. "Before. I'm not that girl who fell in love in your studio. I'm not that guy either." He reached across the table, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. Maybe that's okay. I looked at his hand, thought about the letter in my drawer, about dreams deferred and paths not taken, about June and Miles, asleep in their beds, safe and loved and whole. I took his hand. We didn't move in right away. I kept the cabin through summer, a safety net I wasn't ready to let go. But more and more, home became where we all were together. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, bedtime stories with all 4 of us piled on June's bed, teaching Miles to ride a bike in the driveway while June cheered him on. The wedding, when it came, was nothing like what that long-ago letter had imagined. No Charleston society, no grand gestures, just us and Mabel and Rebecca in the courthouse garden, June throwing flower petals with wild abandon, while Miles held the rings with solemn responsibility. "I now pronounce you," the justice of the peace began. "Married," June shouted, and even the justice laughed. That night, our first as an official family, I found Graham in Miles's room. Our son was asleep, clutching the wooden plane that had never left his sight since that first day at the Wildlife Center. "Thank you," Graham whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up. For protecting them when I couldn't. For letting me try again." I leaned against him, feeling the weight of 2 invisible years finally lifting. "We're writing a new story now," I said. "Yeah?" He wrapped his arm around me. "How does it end?" From down the hall, June called out in her sleep, probably dreaming of hawks. Miles stirred, but didn't wake. The old house creaked around us, settling into its new role as home. "It doesn't," I said. "It just keeps going." And it did. Day by day, season by season, one small moment of grace at a time. A family built not on perfection, but on presence. Not on what should have been, but on what we chose to make it. The forgotten letter stayed in my drawer, a reminder that sometimes the best stories are the ones we write in reverse. Ending first, beginning last. Love rediscovered in between. Outside, spring rain began to fall, watering the garden we'd plant together come morning.